Hello, everybody, and this is Big Rick, and we're going to be talking sports. This is my first video vlog, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get to it. The NFL season is about to kick off, and we are going to discuss the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. We're going to see how I feel about their chances about winning the Super Bowl. All this hype around them. We got them on HBO, on Hard Knocks. We're going to see how it goes. I'll let you know my feelings about the situation. Um, we're also going to discuss teams that should be tanking for Caleb Williams. Uh, there are some teams out there that need a quarterback, have been needing a quarterback for a long time, and we're going to discuss which ones I believe should tank. On top of that, we're going to look at last year's playoff bracket, and we're going to discuss which teams on that bracket will not make the playoffs this year and which teams will. And then we're going to go over my playoff predictions, my predictions for who's going to win what divisions. I'm going to take a stab at guessing their records, see which ones, how accurate I am. We'll revisit this in a year and see if I am Nostradamus, if I'm psychic. If not, well, I'll have to find another job. But for now, that's what we're going to do. And let's have some fun, all right? So let's begin the show. Like I said, let's discuss this Jets situation. Aaron Rodgers, certifiably a Hall of Famer, first ballot, right? It's not like Eli Manning. I'm a Giants fan, and I believe Eli Manning deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but I know he's not going to get in on the first ballot. He's probably going to be second, third ballot, but he is certifiably first ballot, even though Eli's won more Super Bowls, and even though Eli's taken down Tom Brady twice, especially probably the greatest team ever put on the field. But that's for another day's discussion. We're going to talk about Aaron Rodgers and what he brings to the Jets, and will it work? And I'm here to tell you, and I know Jet fans are going to jump on me and say I'm only saying this because I'm a Giants fan. I'm going to tell you that no, it's not going to work. It's not. It's not going to work. And I'll tell you why. We've seen this movie before. You've seen it. When was the last time the Jets had a Hall of Famer on their team? A Hall of Fame quarterback, I'm sorry. It would have been 2008. 2008 was the last time the Jets had a Hall of Fame quarterback on their team. Now try to remember 2008 if you can. Who was that quarterback? It was Brett Favre, or Favre, like in that movie. I forgot the name of it. Something about Mary or something like that. Yeah, something about Mary. That was the name of the movie. But 2008, Jets went 9-7. He threw 22 touchdowns and 22 interceptions. Somehow, with those numbers, he still got into a Pro Bowl invite, which I can't believe he did. Didn't make the playoffs. It was horrible. I mean, if Eli would have thrown for those numbers, everybody would have been down his throat. Brett Favre throws for those numbers, he gets a Pro Bowl invite. But that was the last time you guys had a Super Bowl, a quarterback that won a Super Bowl on your team, I think, that I can remember. But a Hall of Famer on your team, and he came from Green Bay. Now you're basically playing the same song and dance again. You're getting a Green Bay quarterback who's past his prime, and we saw it last year with his numbers. His numbers were not what I would say Aaron Rodgers-esque. I mean, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and I put that on Aaron. Aaron did not come in during the preseason. He was on his ayahuasca trip and his darkness retreat because he needed to know if he had the passion to play football. And instead of learning to throw to these young wide receivers who he thought were subpar, but Some of them actually ended up being pretty good. Um, his numbers, I mean, they're not horrible, but they're not what we're used to seeing from Aaron Rodgers. The year prior, 2021, he threw for 4,115 yards. He had a long of 75, 37 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He, in 2022, had 11 less touchdowns, so he had 26 touchdowns, 3 times more interceptions, so he threw for 12 interceptions. He had about 500 yards less of passing, 3,695. So that's the Aaron Rodgers again. But also, remember this. Even though he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, he's not been successful in the playoffs at all. If you want to say like he's ever dominated a round in the playoffs, it would have to be the wild card round. And he's only 4-2 in that round. It's not like he's 6-0. He's 4-2. And then the divisional round, he's 5-4. Then you get to the NFC Championship round, he's 1-4. And in that one win, he didn't dominate anything. They won. They won by 7. They beat Chicago 21-14. He's lost 4 different times in that championship round. And you're telling me this is the guy that's going to lead you to the championship. So in 2015, they lost to the Seahawks 28-22. And that was the game. Remember, they were up 19-7 with about 5 minutes to go, and they blew it. Then they got blown out by Atlanta 44-21. Got blown out by San Francisco 37-20. And then got beat by Tom Brady 31-26. That has been his NFC championship. And don't forget the season they were 15-1 and lost to the Giants. Okay, so that's the guy you think is going to take you to the Super Bowl? And listen, Jet fans, I understand. You're not an organization that's known for having a quarterback. So when you have a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers comes in, you get excited. And I feel for you. Like, I lived in Jersey. I lived off of exit 13A, Elizabeth, New Jersey. I grew up there, right next to Newark. I lived right next to Newark Airport. Literally, I used to be able to drive to Newark Airport in less than 2 minutes. So I know how you guys feel. I had a lot of Jet fans, friends that were there, and every time the Giants won the Super Bowl, they would get pissed off, right? I remember Jet fans getting in my face when we were going to face off against the Patriots in 2007, and they were like, "Oh, you guys are going to get so annihilated. You guys are going to get creamed the worse than you did when you lost to the Ravens," and blah, 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 blah. And then when we won that Super Bowl, they all were pissed. They were angry because they couldn't believe we won another championship, and they couldn't believe we won it with Eli. But, I mean, think about the quarterbacks you have. In my lifetime, I can think of, when I think of Jets quarterbacks, I think of Kenny O'Brien. I remember Kenny O'Brien being a Jet. But I try to think of Jet quarterbacks that, like, were drafted by the Jets. Then there's Mark Sanchez, Chad Pennington. I was born in 79, so I might have missed someone around the time I was born. I see Richard Todd was on there from 76 to 83. I would have only been 4. I started watching football when I was like in 84, 85. So I don't remember Richard Todd. I remember Ken O'Brien, Vinny Testaverde. I rooted for Vinny when he was on the Jets because I loved Vinny Testaverde when he was a Miami Hurricane. I rooted for all my Hurricane quarterbacks, Bernie Kosar, Gino Torretta, and all of them. But yeah, Vinny Testaverde got you to a couple of AFC championships. Mark Sanchez did his best. Pennington did his best. But let's go back to 2008 again, right? And when Brett Favre was there, right? In 2008, who was he competing against? Like, what were the main quarterbacks back then? It wasn't Tom Brady, because that was the year Tom Brady was out for the season from the beginning. So his competition in 2008 was Peyton Manning, right? That was the main one. That's the only one on this list that's going to be a Hall of Famer. Well, maybe. Well, Ben Roethlisberger, he'll probably be a Hall of Famer. Joe Flacco, I don't think Joe Flacco's a Hall of Famer. Kerry Collins, ex-Giant, I love him. Not a Hall of Famer. He had a resurgence with the Titans. Chad Pennington, ex-Jet, had a resurgence with the Dolphins. Phillip Rivers, he'll probably be a Hall of Famer, but he was always one of those guys where no matter how good he did in the regular season, he was never no good in the postseason. And even sometimes in the regular season, he could put up great numbers, but his team was just subpar. And I think that year they were 8-8 and won their division by some type of tiebreaker and made the playoffs. So I don't think they were that dangerous. So that was the competition of quarterbacks in the AFC. Now you're telling me that he's coming over to the AFC. Remember, he was in the NFC. And all this time in the NFC, he couldn't get past. Let's see. Who was probably the best quarterback in the NFC? I'm trying to think. You had Russell Wilson. Was probably one of the better quarterbacks. Dak Prescott, one of the better quarterbacks. I'm trying to think of a quarterback that ran the NFC, like owned the NFC, or quarterbacks that just were like really, really good that you had to worry about all the time. Eli Manning was there for a bit. I mean, he retired in 2016 or something like that. Last time he won us a chip was in 2011, so it wasn't like we did all that much after that. We had the one season where we got to the playoffs with OBJ, and then the whole boat debacle thing happened. I'm trying to think, who else was there? I can't think of anyone else, but let's look at the AFC right now. Right now, this season, these are the quarterbacks he has to deal with. We got Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is way better. And he never has any real weapons except for Travis Kelce. He turned Tony. The Giants gave up on Tony. He goes over there, and Tony wins them the Super Bowl, basically. So Mahomes has some type of magic. Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is like the new Joe Namath. He's just Joe Cool. I believe he's going to win a Super Bowl soon. Justin Herbert. If the Chargers could ever get a defense, he might win. He might win a Super Bowl if they could ever give him a defense. Trevor Lawrence, he's coming up. He's coming up. I think with Doug Peterson there, they finally get him the right coach. I don't know what the hell they were thinking hiring that. I won't even name him because he's such an idiot. He almost ruined that poor kid's career. Deshaun Watson, I still don't know what he's going to be, but if he ever gets back to being what he was with the Texans, he's an amazing quarterback. Tua, I can never pronounce his last name. Tagovailoa, sorry, Tua. You have a hard name to say. I'm sorry. Okay. Josh Allen. He's a gunslinger, but gunslingers do win Super Bowls. Brett Favre won one. He's a gunslinger. And then you got Russell Wilson. We got to see if he bounces back this year, or is it the same old thing? But still, even let's say we subtract Watson and Russell Wilson, we still got 3, 5, 7 quarterbacks ahead of them. Only 7 teams make the playoffs. So those are your 7 teams right there. I don't think he's better than any of those quarterbacks. And honestly, if I would have been the Jets owner, remember when the whole thing was going on with Lamar Jackson, where the Ravens are like, "Oh, we're not paying you." No, you go ahead and find someone who'll give us 2 first-round picks, and we'll trade you to that team. If I were the Jets, I would have jumped on that. I would have jumped on it. If I were the Giants, and I've been backing Daniel Jones, but I even said, guys, trade right now. Like, Lamar Jackson's way ahead of Daniel Jones. Trade him. Trade the 2 picks and Daniel Jones if you have to. Go after him. This kid's legit. He already has an MVP. And the thing with the Jets is, like, if you would have done that trade, yes, he would have lost 2 first-round picks. But Lamar fits the timeline. Your team is young and hungry. This kid is young and hungry. You got an old 38, 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers. What if something happens? And Zach Wilson's right there, right? So what is the plan? Let's say halfway through the year, I mean, that offensive line is bad too. So halfway through the year, he sprains an ankle or something, and Zach Wilson has to take over. Zach Wilson's not ready. The whole plan is that Aaron Rodgers is going to be with the team for a certain amount of time, and then Zach Wilson's going to take over. So 2 or 3 years, and then he takes over. Do you believe enough that in those years, Zach Wilson's going to learn enough to take over this team and continue making the playoffs with this team? Because really all you need on this team is a competent quarterback who can complete passes and not turn the ball over. Really, how I equate it, this is what the Jets need. They need Trent Dilfer. That's all you need. Remember, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. He wasn't a great quarterback. All he had to do was manage the game. The defense is that good. But Aaron Rodgers, if anything happens to him, it's over for the Jets because you didn't even bother picking up a suitable backup. So, I don't know. To me, I think I would have gone after Lamar. He's younger. He can scramble. With that offensive line, you need a scrambler. He has a cannon for an arm. Yes, he's not accurate. I agree. He's not accurate as he should be. But I will still ride or die with him because even if he turns the ball over, you have a solid defense that could probably stop most teams. So, to me, it was a head scratcher that the Jets didn't go after him. I don't think this team will win the Super Bowl. It's like when I told my friends when the New Jersey Nets got a lot of my friends started talking crap because the New Jersey Nets ended up getting KD and Kyrie, and they were like, "Oh, you Knicks fans wanted him. You guys missed out, and blah 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 blah." And I was like, "No, I wanted KD. I never wanted Kyrie. If the two came together, I didn't want neither. And you guys ain't gonna win a championship because it's not gonna work." And nobody believed me, and it was all over TV that they were going to win a championship. And they never did. I was right. And I don't believe the Jets are going to win a championship with Aaron Rodgers there. It's just not going to work. The AFC is too deep, and Aaron Rodgers is not that good. There are better teams out there that could beat him. So I'm sorry, Jet fans, but it's the same old song and dance. You draft quarterbacks that aren't good, and then you give up on them, and now you're bringing a quarterback over from Green Bay. I could just see it now. In like 15 years, Jordan Love's going to wear out his welcome in Green Bay, and I'll see him in a Jets uniform. So if you continue like this, you're going to be not winning a Super Bowl anytime soon. I don't care how good that defense is, because you've had great defenses before. Under Bill Parcells, you had a great defense, and you couldn't win the championship. So Aaron Rodgers is not going to do it for you guys. I'm sorry. It's over. You stick with one championship. As of right now, you are with the Bears and the Saints. Those are one-chip teams. I think Seattle has a one-chip. I don't see you guys winning it this year. So, sorry, Aaron Rodgers will not win you a championship. Let's move on. Let's talk about teams that should be tanking for Caleb Williams. Now, I got 6 teams, but I think I'm starting to think that there should be a 7th team. I'm starting to give up on a quarterback, and I think this team, they should tank, but I don't know if they will. But there's also another question to this tanking, and I'll come up to that question at the end of this. Um, so the first team I have tanking, and I think it's obvious that they're tanking, it's the Cardinals. I mean, they've traded away so many assets, and right now it just doesn't look like this team. If this team wins 2 games this year, I'd be amazed. If they win more than that, I'd be shocked. Um, if they even sniff the playoffs, I'd be mortified because this team is that bad. They're not going to let Kyler Murray see the field this year. They're just not. They're going with this Dobbs kid and kid they just traded for, and it's just not going to work out. It's not. So they're tanking for Caleb. So that one's an obvious one. The next one I'm going with is the Bucks. When your best option is Baker Mayfield, a guy that has been on what now? This is 13. Now I don't know why the Browns gave up on him so fast and just wanted to jump ship for Deshaun Watson, but I think it speaks a lot when they jumped for a guy that had criminal charges and NFL suspension looming. But to me, when you have that's your option, it's time to rebuild. Trade Mike Evans, trade Vita Vea, trade as many of your assets as you can, and just rebuild and tank and just get Caleb Williams. I mean, this is once in a generation talent, and you need it. You desperately need it. The next I'm going with is the Raiders. And the reason I say the Raiders, I don't think they're going to get the number 1 pick because I think they're going to win enough games where they won't get the number 1 pick. But the Raiders have needed a generational quarterback for a long time. And they've been doing this thing where they will go out and sign older quarterbacks they drafted Derek Carr and they decided, well, he's not good enough. I don't know why he wasn't good enough for them. I think he was a great quarterback for them. They just didn't have the right coaching. They don't have the right drafting talent. I don't know who's making these drafting decisions, but I mean, when you have 2 first-round picks and one gets arrested and the other one is cut from the team, it just shows that you're not doing your due diligence during draft day. They're just horrible at drafting. And Derek Carr was actually a good draft pick. Max Crosby was a good draft pick. Those are the 2 I can name. Josh Jacobs also. But okay, so 3 out of how many years now? It's just been that bad for them. So I would tank, but they got Jimmy Garoppolo, and I know it's going to be hard for them to tank. But I would do it just so you can actually finally have a good quarterback in there. And actually, even if you don't tank for Caleb Williams, this is a stacked draft of quarterbacks. So it doesn't just have to be Caleb Williams. It could be any of the other quarterbacks on that draft that's coming out. But Caleb Williams is the prize, but I don't know why the Raiders wouldn't try to tank. I don't know why they picked up Jimmy Garoppolo. I would have just picked up some random scrub and just trade away Devontae, trade away anything you can, Max Crosby, just rebuild. I mean, poor Raider fans, I feel so bad for them. Then you got the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, they're not long removed from winning a Super Bowl, but the problem is they traded away all their picks. And at this point, Matthew Stafford, from what I'm hearing, is not getting along with any of the young players. I think it's time to move on. I think you're closer to the rebuild than you are to winning another Super Bowl. So why not just give up on all these assets? I mean, trade them to a team that could win or is looking to win now. And just replace Matthew Stafford. You can trade Matthew Stafford to any team who's eventually a team's going to be desperate enough for Matthew Stafford to come in and help win. So I would I would trade Matthew Stafford. You might not trade him right now at the beginning, but maybe at the midway point. Some team's going to be desperate. Um, and you also got Aaron Donald. Uh, Jalen Ramsey's already gone. Cooper Kupp could go somewhere. I mean, these are like first round assets, maybe second or third round. You can get some good value there. The Commanders are my next one. I'm sorry, but I don't believe in Sam Howell. All this talk during the preseason about how Sam Howell's like this great quarterback and this and that. He's the worst quarterback in that division. And I mean, and that's saying a lot because yeah, Dak is a great quarterback. Um, you also got Jalen Hurts, who's a great quarterback. I believe Daniel Jones is going to have a great season. Um, and but Sam Howell's like the worst in that division. So I honestly don't see the Commanders winning that many games this year. I would tank just to get a great quarterback because the Commanders have needed one for a while. And they're really, think about it, last year, the NFC East had 3 teams representing it. And I remember at a time when the NFC East was called the NFC Least. It wasn't that long ago. So the NFC East has come up. But they need to do something. They finally got rid of Dan Snyder. It's time to fix your quarterback situation. And I think this is Ron Rivera's last year there. I don't see them keeping him. Tennessee Titans. I think it's time. It's time to call it quits. You've had a nice run, but Tannehill's not the answer. Your running back is getting a little bit older. We all know that running backs are frail, and honestly, they're just at this point, people just discard them after a couple years. And as good as Derrick Henry is, are you going to pay him that big amount of money? And you already traded one of your best wide receivers last year to the Philadelphia Eagles, and you kind of gave the hint to Tannehill that you don't believe him because you've been drafting quarterbacks, but I don't think any of them are going to turn out to be as good as the quarterbacks are in this draft. Now, the one team that I said I believe should be on this list also will be the Bears. I'm sorry, but I have no faith in their quarterback. I really don't. Because, I mean, have you seen his games? I've been watching, and it's like, it's almost like he has no belief in himself. He holds onto the ball too hard. It's too long. This open wide receiver is running all over the place, and he's not throwing it. So I remember when the Giants made the trade, and they got the Bears' first-round pick for the following year, and the Giants slid back. I actually loved the trade because I knew that the Bears were going to suck. I was like, Justin Fields is not going to turn this thing around. And I knew we were going to have 2 high top 10 picks, and we ended up getting Evan O'Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau. I think they're gonna realize this year that Justin Fields is not. There's some people picking him to actually win the MVP. I think Chris Broussard on ESPN or FSN, whatever they're on. I always get these shows confused on what channel they're on. From First Take, First Things First, picked him to be an MVP candidate, like a dark horse candidate for MVP. I'm like, I don't know what you're smoking, but no, he's not going to win MVP. So those are the teams I think should, and the reason why is he's a generational talent. I mean, he already has the Heisman. He's probably going to win it again. He's the odds-on favorite to win it. Right now he's at plus 500 to win it. Jaden Daniels is at plus 1,000. Jordan Travis is at plus 1,200. Quinn Ewers, is that how you say it? Plus 1,200. Cade Klubnik is at plus 1,400. These are all quarterbacks that will probably come out next year's draft. Um, that's what I'm saying. These teams need to just start over one of these quarterbacks. Um, but yeah, he's going to win it again. That'll be a two-time Heisman Trophy winner. My question, though, is let's say you are Caleb Williams and Arizona holds the first pick overall. Would you come out? Or do you pull an Eli Manning and say, I'm not going to play for the Chargers? You better trade me. Like, if you draft me, don't even think I'm showing up to camp. Because if I'm any quarterback and I'm drafted by the Cardinals, I'm saying no. Because not only did you draft Josh Rosen, but the following year you drafted Kyler Murray. And then I see how you treated Kyler Murray when someone leaked out that in his contract he had a certain amount of study time because he wasn't studying enough. And that whole team is disarray. Like, management and everything is in disarray. Do I want to play for the Cardinals? My answer is no. Trade me somewhere else. So let's say the Cardinals, the Bucks, the Raiders, the Rams, the Commanders, the Titans, and the Bears are your top 7 teams. And the Cardinals are there, and he picked Caleb Williams, and he goes, I'm not going to play for you, trade me somewhere else. What team do I trade him to? If I'm the Cardinals, hopefully getting, not falling too far back, but still getting this year's first-round pick and next year's first-round pick, because you want to be able to get a high pick next year, too. You don't want the team to automatically bounce back and be a really great team. I'd probably try to trade him to the Bucks because I don't think the Bucks are going to win that many games. Or the Commanders are not that bad of a team if they had a good quarterback. And the Titans aren't either. So either the Bucks or the Raiders, because the Raiders could end up in the basement in that division, because that division is going to be tough to move up on. Because I believe Sean Payton will turn around the Broncos pretty quick. I believe Kansas City is going to be hard to knock off first place anytime soon. Then you got the Chargers coming up in second. So it's probably going to be Kansas City, Chargers, and Broncos 1, 2, and 3 for years to come. So I'd probably trade them to the Raiders if I was them. But if I was Caleb Williams, I'm not going to Arizona for any reason. Okay, so let's move on to last year's NFL brackets and NFL teams and see which teams I believe will not make the playoffs this year. So last year, AFC playoff teams were the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jaguars. So the West had 2 teams represented, the North had 2 teams, the East had 2 teams, and the South had 1 team. In the NFC, we had the 49ers, the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Bucks, which the West had 2 teams, the North had 1, the East had 3, the South had 1. By the way, the Buccaneers, that one pissed me off so bad. Sometimes I hate how the NFL does the playoff because there's always that one division that sucks mightily. And the Bucks were below 500. I think there has to be a prerequisite that your team has to at least finish, even if you win your division, you have to finish above 500 to make the playoffs. Not even tied at 500. I don't care if you go 8-1. You can't make the playoffs at that record because it is just a slap to the face that an 8-9 team made the playoff. And then they got their butts whooped anyway in the first round. So the teams I picked that are not going to make the playoffs this year, I don't think, are the Vikings and the Bucks. Obviously the Bucks because, well, Baker Mayfield. That's your quarterback. And the Vikings, well, you got rid of Dalvin Cook, one of your pivotal offensive players, and you have a quarterback who lives off of play actions and little screen passes. So I see that hurting him a lot. I don't. And the NFC North, we're gonna look. I'm gonna go through my predictions for each one, but I don't think the Vikings can win it. I think there's better teams in there than the Vikings. So let's go through my predictions. We're gonna start off with the AFC East. AFC East, I got Buffalo going 13-4, Dolphins going 12-5, Jets going 10-7, and New England going 9-8. And I just don't think, like I said, the Jets are just not going to make the playoffs. I don't think the Aaron Rodgers experiment is going to work this year. I think the defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. Defense might win them most of these games. But I just think the Dolphins are stacked. They have way more offensive firepower than the Jets. I think their defense is up there. It's not as good as the Jets, but it's up there enough to where they can beat the Jets. I think Buffalo, they'll split with the Jets, but they'll be a tough team. I think the Jets will probably demolish the Patriots. I think that's the one team they're going to beat in this division soundly both times. But yeah, so I think in this division it's going to be Buffalo and Dolphins. AFC North, I got the Bengals going 13-4, Ravens 11-6, Steelers 10-7, Browns 9-8. I think Joe Burrow is going to have an amazing season. The Ravens are going to be a pretty good team. They finally got Lamar Jackson some weapons. The Steelers, Mike Tomlin's getting close to putting this team back in the playoffs, making them Super Bowl contenders. Last year, it looked like it was going to be the first time that he was not going to be above 500, and they still made it above 500. The Browns, I think there's still a little bit of ways to go, but they're almost there. But Deshaun Watson's going to be rusty. He's not going to win. Then we got Jacksonville. AFC South. Jacksonville, I got them going 11-6. I think this is going to be one of the weakest divisions in the AFC. So I got Jacksonville 11-6. Tennessee Titans 9-8. Colts 5-12. Houston 3-14, which helps out Arizona because they own that pick. AFC West, I got Kansas City going 15-2, Chargers 11-6, Broncos 9-8, and the Raiders 5-12. I mean, like I said, this is gonna how it's gonna be for a while. 15-2 might be ridiculous, but I don't believe they're gonna go 20-0 like Nick, whatever his name is from First Things First. Now let's go to the NFC East. Eagles 14-3. I got the Giants at 12-5. That's right. I think the Giants are going to end up in second. I might be a little bit of a homer, but I think we can steal a game from either the Eagles or Dallas. I think we'll beat up on Washington. Dallas will be 11-6. Washington will be 7-10. I was kind to Washington. I still don't believe in Sam Howell. The NFC North, I got Detroit at 11-6. I think this is their year once and for all. I think they should bring back Barry Sanders and give him an honorary football or something. Do something special for the guy because for years he carried this team and they never gave them a good quarterback. The best quarterback I remember him having was Scott Mitchell. The Packers 10-7. I think Jordan Love is going to have a pretty decent year. 9-8 for Justin Fields and the Bears, and 6-11 for the Vikings. I know that's going to shock and piss off a lot of people, but that's my predictions. Okay. NFC South. This is one of the weakest divisions. Also, it's the South. I don't know why is the South so weak. In both conferences, like why? So the Saints 10-7, Tampa Bay 8-9, Falcons 7-10, Carolina 3-14. Now that I look at this, I actually think the Falcons might win more games than Tampa Bay, but Bijou Robinson looks like he could be a good rookie. NFC West, we got San Francisco at 13-4, Seattle at 10-7. We got the Rams at 5-12, and the Cardinals at 2-15. So let's go to the playoff picture. And we're going to start off with the AFC side. So that would leave Kansas City having the bye. First round matchup would be the Florida matchup of the Jaguars versus the Dolphins. We also have Buffalo versus the Ravens and Bengals versus the Chargers. I have the Ravens beating Buffalo. I just don't trust Josh Allen. He seems to be having turnover issues last year, and I don't know. Ever since Dayball left, something's wrong with Josh Allen. I think it's going to continue in the playoffs. So I see him losing. I see the Dolphins beating the Jaguars. I think the Dolphins just have too much firepower. Nothing against Trevor Lawrence. I think he's going to be a great quarterback, but I think Tua has him in this one. The Bengals will beat the Chargers. Why? Because it's the Chargers. They just suck at the playoffs. And I have the Ravens beating Buffalo. So then the matchups would be Kansas City versus the Ravens and Bengals versus the Dolphins. I have Kansas City beating the Ravens, advancing to the AFC Championship again. And the Bengals beating the Dolphins. So it's Kansas City versus the Bengals. And I have the Bengals beating Kansas City and Joe Burrow's back in the Super Bowl. So now for the NFC, we have the Eagles with the bye. You have the Saints versus the Giants. We have the Lions versus the Cowboys. San Francisco versus Seahawks. I have the Saints and the Giants playing. I have the Giants beating them. Detroit versus the Cowboys. I have the Cowboys winning, even though I want Detroit to win so badly. I want them to win so badly. San Francisco versus Seattle. I have San Francisco in divisional round. I love this divisional round matchup. If this happens, I think NFL will be so happy. Because you have the Eagles versus the Cowboys as a divisional rivalry. Then you got the Giants versus San Francisco. When every time they play in the playoffs, some wacky stuff happens. So I have San Fran beating my Giants. I'm being unbiased here. So San Fran moves on. I got the Eagles beating the Cowboys. Rematch of last year's NFC Championship. And I have the San Francisco 49ers moving on, getting revenge. And we're getting a rematch of Super Bowl that happened, well, two Super Bowls that happened in the 80s, but this time with a different outcome. Instead of the 49ers beating the Bengals, I had the Bengals winning the Super Bowl and winning their first Super Bowl and finally getting off the snide of being one of those teams without a Super Bowl, which right now includes the Lions, the Vikings, the Falcons. Falcons, you had your chance. 28-3, man, 28-3. Carolina, Cardinals, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Browns, Jaguars, Titans, Texans, Chargers. So they will no longer be with a 0 next to the number of how many Super Bowls they won. They will win their first Super Bowl. And those are my predictions for the playoffs. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree with anything I've said in this. But I appreciate everything. I appreciate your time. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you next time. Love you guys. Peace.